Thank you, and thank you, Minister, for being here. I appreciated your remarks. We're here today to question you on the family reunification study that the committee has been undertaking for the last number of months in response to the tremendous challenges faced by families and by others as a result of your government's immigration response to the pandemic. And we've really heard very heartbreaking stories, and I'm sure you've heard many of those as well. And Christmas is coming. Families are getting very desperate. It's really been a brutal 9 months for everyone, but I can't imagine doing it without a spouse or a sibling or someone who's very close to you. And last week, you committed to the committee to personally reviewing the list of 100 people that have been separated because of the border closures. And on October 2nd, you committed on national television to process these family reunification requests for the border separations by October 28th, which we know is over a month ago. And yet here we are, there's a list of about 100 people that we're aware of, where we suspect there's many more that we're not aware of that were not approved. So I have a specific question. Courtney is a woman on that list I gave you. She's a mother of a newborn baby. Her fiance is Canadian in Calgary. She's on that list. Will she be able to reunite with her Canadian fiance for Christmas?
Well, first of all, as I've said, this is a difficult time. I acknowledge that, and we are doing everything that we can to reunite families. I have been in touch with my team to be briefed on those outstanding cases, Ms. Dancho, and we will continue to work with you and all members to troubleshoot those cases to ensure we reunite as many families as we possibly can.
Thank you. And last week, you had, or rather your officials actually had confirmed that you personally authorized over 1,300 national interest exemptions, presumably with the stroke of a pen. And we know that these exemptions your government has provided has allowed many elites, American billionaires, others to enter the country, sort of no questions asked, no quarantine plan. And then we have this list, and I appreciate that you are looking at it, but in normal circumstances, these folks would be able to come into Canada. So I'm just wondering if you can confirm that those 100 people will be reunited with their families for Christmas.
Well, again, Ms. Dancho, as I've committed to and as I have fulfilled, I continue to be in touch with my team and my department to ensure that we are reuniting as many families as possible. Obviously, it would not be appropriate for me to speak to any particular or specific case in a public forum, but you do have my ongoing commitment and the commitment of the entire government to continue to reunite, in addition to the thousands of families that we already have, more. And we will do it in a way that is fair and as efficient as possible.
And I appreciate your remarks about fairness, but I feel that there is a communication issue coming from your office or from your department. I know many folks have reached out. They're reapplying every day because they're not hearing anything from your government. And I think that's contributing to the backlog and the confusion. So more communication and transparency may be key to this. But we recently learned there were 5 million people that were allowed to come into Canada without quarantine. We know most of these are essential services, hauling goods and things. But the fact remains that your government has allowed 5 million people into the country without quarantine plans. And yet folks like Donna McCall that died in a hospital bed holding her husband's hand, while in his other hand, of course, he had his children who couldn't enter the country at the Canadian-American border on his iPhone. So stories like that are devastating, and there's been many of them in the last 9 months. And frankly, I have to say, I haven't heard any public apology from your government of the shortfalls and the families that really have been ripped apart and have died without getting to say goodbye. And I'm just wondering, are you considering issuing an apology for those that you've let down?
Well, like you, my heart goes out to everybody who has lost someone during COVID, and this pandemic has made it very difficult. With regards to those who are traveling back and forth over the border, including in border towns like Windsor, where I have family, where we see the incredible service of our frontline responders, we ensure that health protocols are being followed so that the health and safety of all Canadians is protected, and that more importantly, people are getting the treatment that they need. So there is integrity at the border by adherence to following the best public health care advice, which has been informed in every decision that we've taken at the border.
And I appreciate that. It's just there's a lot of people that have been able to come in, and yet there's this 100 list and John McCall's children. And it seems that you're letting some in and not others. And it's just really not been going very well for many people. And much of it is because of the border closures. We recognize the importance of that. But yesterday, the Prime Minister had said that, and I quote, regarding the Canada-US border closure, he said, until the virus is significantly more under control everywhere around the world, we're not going to be releasing the restrictions at the border. So really, we know we could be living with COVID for many years, unfortunately. And, there's family breakdown, there's people dying, not being able to say goodbye. There's a lot of these issues going on. And really, the status quo hasn't been working very well for all these people falling through the cracks. And I have to say, I don't feel that you're communicating very well on the new application processes. And frankly, today I'm seeing a little bit of empathy from you, but this is the first time we're really seeing an acknowledgement of the suffering. And I think that needs to be more acknowledged more often. So what is the plan for the next year or 2 years or 3 years that these borders are going to be remained closed for all the people that normally cross the border to see family? What is the long-term plan? Because I don't feel that it's really working very well right now.
Well, on the contrary, Ms. Dancho, the plan is working very well, and our decisions at the border to put in place a set of travel restrictions, which limit all but the most essential travel, has contributed to our capacity to reduce the spread of the virus. And with regards to our plan in reuniting families, we've reunited thousands. We are living up to our service standard. And where those applications require additional information, we work with you and all members to try and reunite as many families as possible. And that is my commitment to you, Ms. Dancho.
I
And
recognize that, Minister.
we will continue
I
to do this
appreciate your
important work.
commitment, but I think a little bit more goodwill and trust of Canadians wanting to be reunited may do very well for these families separated by the border closure moving forward. Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, a few weeks ago, you had announced your government's very ambitious plan to admit 401,000 permanent residents into Canada, which I think is the most in Canadian history, really. And the goal was to include 80,000 family permanent residents as well in that 400,000. So the committee has heard testimony on this, and my understanding is on November 5th, we received notice that 60,000 people were backlogged in the family PR stream, so to speak. And at testimony, we've heard from Misha Pelche, Chantal Dubé, who are Canadian in Canada and have been separated from their husbands abroad for years with really no response or communication from your government on why they're not being approved for their husbands to come be with them. And so my question is, can you commit to women like Misha and Chantel that they'll be reunited for Christmas? And more than that, can you commit to clearing the family sponsorship backlog for next year as the first priority for that 401,000 PRs you're hoping to bring in?
Well, certainly, as I said, we have put a tremendous amount of focus on reuniting families. We are going to hit the 49,000 spousal sponsorship target by the end of December. I am confident on the basis of the tremendous effort that my department is continuing to exercise day in and day out. And with regards to individual cases, as I said, Ms. Dancho, we're happy to collaborate.
Yeah, I recognize that. I was just hoping we can give them some good news since they desperately need it and frankly deserve it. But we'll move on. I do feel that a lot of these problems related, they haven't got any updates, they don't know the timelines, they're not being told why they're not being approved, and this kind of goes across all streams. It doesn't really provide a lot of dignity to these individuals, whether they're Canadian or trying to become Canadian and getting into. A good example of this is your government's economic update on Monday said that this year you've only reached half of the permanent residents you wanted to. So there's clearly some problems. And if we look at expired permanent residents, for example, the COPRs, as we've been calling them, these are people who've been vetted, paid the fees to come into the country. They've sold their homes, quit their jobs, taken their kids out of school, bought the plane ticket to come to Canada. And then the borders closed, and then your government told them all that they needed to get an authorization letter. But the problem is that they haven't been issued these authorization letters, and it's been 9 months of this. And when I spoke to your officials about it, they wouldn't really acknowledge that there was even a problem. And in fact, they sort of said, oh no, they can all come to Canada. So we received a lot of emails following that, and I wanted to give you just some feedback from this one mother. Her name is Pranali Main. She said, quote, our immigration dream has turned into a nightmare. I resigned in January, child out of school in May, ready to travel since June, all required docs submitted and acknowledged by IRCC, but kept waiting ever since. Please help us, she wrote. So I'm not sure there's any compassion you've been offering to women like Pranali, but do you feel that she's just not being truthful, or that these expired COPRs are just not being truthful about not being able to come in, or I'm just really not clear?
My message to her is to keep the faith. No one denies, Ms. Dancho, that there has been disruption caused by COVID-19. That is the simple explanation for the impact on our levels. And certainly with regards to the decisions at the border, I think the vast majority of Canadians agree that we've had to take those decisions to protect their health and safety.
We spoke about that earlier.
We are making tremendous progress, including on reaching out to
I appreciate that, Minister, but you didn't really answer my question about them. But we'll move on.
Can I just have one person speak at one time?
Okay.
So please.
Well, just move on. We only have a minute and a half left. So I just want to leave you with this, Minister. Again, there's a lot of communication problems happening. There's not a lot of empathy being expressed by you or your department for the struggles going forward. And I was, trying to get to know what kind of minister you were. And I went through your remarks in the House of Commons. And I just want to share this one quote that you shared in the House of Commons at the beginning of near the beginning of your political career. And you said, quote, "In the mandate letter of every minister, the Prime Minister notes the government's commitment to set a higher bar for openness and transparency in government." And you went on to say, "We live up to these words every single day." And further, you said the Prime Minister mandated, quote, "that every minister shine more light on government to ensure that it remains focused on the people it serves. Government and its information should be open by default. If we want Canadians to trust their government, we need a government that trusts Canadians." And again, I don't think we're seeing a lot of trust from you or your department on these people that are suffering, trying to be reunited with their families. And really, I do feel that the mark of a good leader, Minister, is not if you can stick to your principles in the easy times, it's whether you can stick to them in the good times. So over the holidays, I just ask that you reflect on your previous words and principles and consider all the communication issues and transparency issues that you're facing, and really bring more empathy to your talking points and to your announcement, and acknowledge the suffering that your department has caused people at home and abroad. And really finally, just that you do everything you possibly can to reunite as many people for Christmas as feasibly possible. So I just ask that you consider that, and thank you, Minister.
I appreciate you referring to those words. I do my level best, as I know we all do as parliamentarians, to live
Madam
up to
Chair, I
it.
believe
Thank
my
you.
time is up.
Yeah, thank you, Minister. We will now move